computer into dark mode. I love it. Does everybody love dark mode? Dark mode is the best. Oh, and apparently it's better for. Oh, look at that! Everything's in dark mode. Yay! A dark mode. Hey, there we go. It's not dark mode because you guys can't see dark mode. Okay. First things first. Let's go into our files and let's make sure that we are closing all of our Module 9 code and we are opening up Module 10. Okay? Close all your Module 9 code, all your code that's open, and open up Module 10. And of course, I'm just making sure that I have all my files uploaded. That seems like a good idea. Okay. What do we have at the moment? So, let's go to our folder. And I want to remind you guys that you should open up the code view so that you can see the PHP that we write along with. But then we can open up in here and you know what? Right now this index.html, I need to change this. I'm going to just delete this because I don't need it anymore. Oh wait. I need to delete it on here as well. There we go. Okay, I'm going to make a new file and I'm going to save it as index.php and I'm going to make an HTML:5 and I'm going to say welcome to the store. I'm going to say that there is a div that is a main, and inside of here I'm going to say that there is a div that is called div.call to action, or CTA, is that what it is? CTA. And then inside of here there is an anchor, and this goes to product main.php. This says and I'm going to include my head into this file, and then I'm going to save and refresh. There we go. I'm going to inspect this. I am going to make my main have a width 100%, height 100%, position fixed, left 0, width, or no, top 0, and background color, no, background image of linear gradient of like yeah, we'll do 32 degrees and blue to red, and then I'm just gonna take this color and I'm gonna make it like this, and I'm gonna take this color and I'm gonna make it like this. Alright, cool. For right now, I'm going to pop that over into my theme. Cool. I'm going to come over to this, and I'm going to say that my CTA has a position absolute, because I've already got it fixed, and a top 0 and a left 0. No, you know what? I think that's got to be 50%, and left 50%, and then transform, translate, negative 50%, comma, negative 50%, and that's in the center. Cool. Take that right there, and then we'll also take a CTAA, and then the CTAA is going to have a padding 1M, a background color of white, a border radius of 2M, and a padding of, I meant 1 and 2M. There we go. Nice, that's all I need. There we go. Cool. Awesome. Landing page. Do you guys love CSS? Cool. Yeah, product site. All right, we're good to go. All right, so I just wanted to remind you that you need to keep working on your website. All right, you need to keep solving problems. You need to keep moving forward. You need to keep improving everything every week. Even as you add new things, you need to keep improving the old things. You need to continue building. You need to continue moving forward. Okay, so on my user admin, I have a list of people, and then I have a page like this. And what I said was, change this page into a form. That's assignment number 1. Can you make this a form? So let's take that page, and let's turn that part of our page into a form. So that's this right here. We just need to make this into a form. Now there's a couple of really easy things we can do that. First of all, let's take all these strongs right here, and let's make them all labels, because that's actually a form element. That seems like a good idea. Let's turn those all into labels. And then, let's take all these spans, and let's turn them into inputs, except that's not how inputs work. Inputs are a singular thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that these inputs have a value of the values that we have right here. And then we're going to give each of these a type of text. We're going to save, and we're going to refresh, and now we have some inputs. Yay! That's basically the start. We need to have a way of making these into inputs, and now they have the actual text of our content inside of them. Okay? Now, this user div right here, I'm going to actually take that user div and I'm just going to take it into a form. There we go. It's a form. I need it to surround all of my elements, so a div can work just as well as a form. This is just now semantically all of this is a form, so now it's a form. I don't think that changes anything visually, but it's just what we needed. At that point, I'm going to give this form a method of post or get. It doesn't matter. It will matter later, but for right now it doesn't matter. We've got this username up here, and I think that actually needs to be something. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to duplicate one of these right here. I am going to change this to say name, and then it's going to say name, and then I'm going to make this thing up here, instead of being h2 username, it's going to say edit user. Because, you know, labeling, super important. What page are we on? What is this thing? What does this do, right? Now we have a form, and it's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to change these user property things right here to something called a form control. It's basically just a way of me making sure that I can actually make something that's super generic. You guys have probably already designed some forms. I haven't really yet, so I'm going to design a form right now. So I'm going to go ahead and take all of these labels, and I'm going to give them a class of form labeled. And then I'm going to take all of these inputs and give them a class of form input. That way there's just tons of classes prepped and ready to go for me to design. It's much better to have more classes than you use than it is to have CSS unused. Okay? So at this point, nothing has changed, but we're prepped and ready to go. We can now design everything in this. I am missing something though. Can anyone tell me what I'm missing?
Submit.
Oh, yeah, I need a button, right? How many of you forgot this on your midterms somewhere? Forgot a submit button. we need a submit button. Okay, so here we go. Let's come down here. I'm going to make a new form control. It's not going to have a label, but it is going to have a form button. And then I'm going to go ahead and say that this has a type of submit and a value of confirm. There we go. So we got a submit button, it's got a value of confirm, and when we click it, what happens? I assume you all got to this point. Did you all get to this point where you clicked a submit button and you went, What happened? Tell me what happened. What happened? Someone describe to me what just happened. Anyone, raise your hand. Make a guess. Make a guess. What just happened? Feel free to be wrong. What just happened? Yes?
Like my page, the browser looks refreshed.
Your page, the browser looks refreshed. Mine didn't refresh though. What did mine do? Mine navigated, right? Or did it? Did it navigate? See, this is the confusing part. Look up in the URL. It just removed the get is what happened, okay? Because when this form submitted, I said that my method was get. And so when my form submitted, it submitted as a get, but it didn't submit anything. Like nothing went, I would assume if I submitted a form, it would put a bunch of things into the get, but it didn't. It just did nothing. There's a number of reasons for that. One is that when you make a form with inputs, if you don't give them a name, they can't be referred to, and so their value can't be evaluated. So we need to go into every single one of these inputs that have data and give them a name. So up here, we're going to say that this is edit name. We're going to say that this is edit type. We're going to say that this is edit email. And we're going to say that this is edit classes. Now, the reason I'm calling them all edit dash is because it's possible for there to be more than one form on this page. It's a really good idea for you to namespace your form properties so that they can be clearly separated from other forms that might use this same information. So I'm namespacing them to edit. Now, if I save and I refresh and I go over to my form again and I confirm, well, it still went back to my list, but now I have a bunch of information from my form in the URL. But it still navigated back to the other page. Why did it do that? You guys, why did it navigate me to the list? Use your brains. Big brain time. Come on. Why did it navigate me back to the list? What is required for me to be on the other page? What's required in the URL for me to be on a individual items page? ID. Is there an ID in my URL? Now you can't probably see it. The answer is no. When the form submitted, it took over the get. Do I have an ID anywhere in my data for my form? The answer is no, I don't. I don't have an ID anywhere in my form. So when the form submitted, it took over the get, and therefore the page that I have, the document that I have, is looking for an ID. If it doesn't find an ID in the get, it shows the list page. That's the way we designed our thing. If there's no ID, the list page gets shown. So that's a problem, okay? So that's why it can be handy to set your form to have a method of post. If we set our form to have a method of post, now when we submit, we stay on the same page. But it refreshes the page. It doesn't technically refresh the page. Refreshing the page is not the right word. It doesn't refresh the page. It calls the page again. It calls the same page. It navigates to the same page. But this time, it passes a bunch of information silently and behind the scenes, securely underneath the browser. It's basically like, send me to this URL, and also here's a bunch of other stuff. Now we can't see that right now, but it is there. We know it's there because we just saw it go into the get, so it must be somewhere. All right, we do know it's there because it was there before and now it's not. So it's there somewhere, it's just not there. Okay? So, on this page, what we're going to now do is we're going to print P, the get, and we're going to print P, the post, which was part of your hint last week. And if I save and I refresh, you can now see that when this page runs, I can see that there is a get of ID and a post of all of the data of my form. Now, if I go back to my list, there's no get and there's no post. If I go back to the form, there's a get, but no post. And it isn't until I confirm my form that suddenly there is post data on the page. You guys, I know that last week's assignment was hard, but if you're noticing right now, I'm not teaching you how to do this yet. I'm just showing you what you could have explored if you explored in a manner that might have been exploratory. Now, it required a couple things. One, it required that you make a proper form. You guys, it had nothing to do with the HTML of the form had nothing to do with PHP. It was just a good HTML form. Okay? And all of you need to understand that, is that right now, this is a good form because it works. It has nothing to do with PHP directly. It has to do with just understanding how to write a good form. Okay? It's a well-structured form. Each part has different separating divs, and the whole thing has a form around it, including the confirm button inside of it. The button has to be inside the form in order for it to submit the data inside the form. Okay? There's all this stuff happening, and at the moment, even though I just showed you the post data, forget about PHP right now. You guys need to know how to write a good HTML form. Okay? Now, is this a good form?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's ugly, was your answer you wanted to give. Yeah, but it's ugly. Okay, so let's at least design this just a little bit. I'm going to come back into this form, and I have a whole bunch of things that I can design separately. Okay, I'm going to take a form control right now, and I'm going to go ahead and say that it has margin top of 1em and margin bottom of 1em, and that's going to push all of my form elements away from each other. Okay, I'm going to take my form label, and I'm going to say that it has, a display of block. And it's going to move my form inputs down below my labels. You guys, labeling is so super important for forms. If you ever see a form out on the internet and it doesn't have labels and all it has is placeholders, you say, bad form. Bad form. All right? Especially for anything more than 2 inputs. Anything more than 2 inputs should have labels on them so that they are clearly delineated. Right now, you guys, I can't see my placeholders because this is an edit form. If I didn't have labels, I would just have values, and I would have to remember what they all are. And every time you have to make a user remember, that's bad. Okay? If a user remembers, that's good, but when you force a user to remember, that's bad. Bad UX. Okay? So we have labels for everything. And they're on a separate line right now, simply because now everything is nice and pretty and lined up. But for other reasons too. Now I'm going to go ahead and say that this has a font size of like 0.7 ems. Maybe? Maybe? What do I like? Do you guys know that you can hold down Alt or Option and tap up and down on the arrow keys when setting a value and get smaller values? So that's nice. I'm going to make it 0.8. That's small, but not too small. And I'm also going to make it a color. But what color do I want? I want this color gray dark. Yeah, so it's just reduced, okay? All of my form labels have a smaller size and they're reduced. I'm also, no, that's all I'm going to do. Cool. All right. I'm going to take that, put that in my CSS. Actually, you guys, I am going to add this into my common. I think form design is a common thing. So I'm going to design my form label here. I'm going to design my form control here, and I'm going to design my form input and form button here as well. I think those are common design elements, and so they should be designed in the common CSS file. So let's go to a form input. This is going to have a border width of 0. It's going to have a font of inherit. I'm going to spell it right. It's going to have a padding of 0.5m, 1m. It's going to have a background color of transparent. Just remove any background color it might have had. It's going to have something that we're going to call a WebKit appearance none. This is because iOS is your worst enemy as a modern designer, and they put a lot of bullshit on their browsers, and they make it so that there's a bunch of stuff that you have. They force a design on you for form inputs. So if you want to design your own thing, you have to put this WebKit appearance right here, so that there's no more of that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say that this has a border bottom of 1 pixel solid color gray dark. And then I'm going to say that this has a display of inline block and a width of 100%. There we go. So we'll take that. And then I'm going to take my form button, and I'm going to say that this one has a width of 100%, a display of inline block, a font of inherit, a padding of 0.5m, 1m, a margin of 0, a border radius of 0.2m, a background color of transparent, a border width of 0, and a background color, no, not a background color of transparent, wrong. Background color of color gray light. Yeah, awesome, nice. A lot of this is basically just redesigning everything the browsers tend to design on the form. They tend to give it a border, they tend to give it a background color, all that kind of stuff. They tend to set the font a little bit smaller, and I like to just keep it the same size. And there we go, now we have a form. Hooray! All of you should understand that designing a form is something that you should do every single time for every single thing that goes into your page. If you've got a drop-down, you should at least design the visible element of the drop-down, even though you don't design the actual drop-down, you just design the button of the drop-down. You should all be really excited about redesigning any form that you come up against, because the fact of the matter is that default forms kind of suck. So, we have a form now. Is this the only kind of form you can design? No, no. A lot of people don't like these underlined forms. A lot of people like to have inputs that kind of look solid. I will tell you this, you need to make sure that your inputs look different than your buttons. You can't have inputs and buttons that look the same. And, generally speaking, the inputs should look receded and the buttons should look unreceded? What's the opposite of receded? Quick! English language man! What's the opposite of receded? Undepressed? Depressed? I don't know. Distended. Ugh. That means bloated. That's an odd one. Interesting. I don't think there is a good expanded. Huh. I'm upset at the English language now. I feel like there should be a better opposite word of receded. Whatever. Okay, so making a form, super important. Hey guys, let's talk about a design decision that I've just made, and you may not be noticing yet because I currently have it in a smaller view. My form is full width, and I'm going to tell you right now that there is a lot of chatter on the internet about forms and how to design them, and I'm going to tell you two things that I think are important. One, there should be labels. I'm personally going to tell you that if you want to have a conversation about this, we can, and I hope that you will allow me to convince you that there should be labels on your form. Okay? Two, I think that forms should fill the space that they're given. And what that means is that you should use layout elements to reduce the size of a form, and not set the size of a form. Okay? A form should be the size of whatever area it's put inside of. And if you want it to be smaller, simply put it inside of a smaller space. Put it inside of some columns or something if you want it to be smaller and less wide. But other than that, whatever form you're making should probably be full width inside of its parent. And that's an easier way to design forms. It means that we don't have to design them all uniquely. You just place them into a spot and then you uniquely change that spot's size. Okay? All right, so we have a form. It has some labels. It has labeling that it's a form. Okay? Not just the inputs have labels, but the form itself has a label. Okay? So, and the form works. When we confirm, it shows. Okay? So the form is sending to our code, and that means that this is a good form. There is one more thing we can do, you guys. Right now we have a name and a label next to that. Labels have a special property to them when your form has an ID, though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this right here, and I'm going to make it an ID. I'm going to copy the name of each one of these inputs, and I'm going to make it an ID. And then I'm going to take that ID, and I'm going to paste it over into the label, and I'm going to change it to a 4. Okay? So for each one of these labels, I'm going to give them a 4. And you guys might remember that we talked about this basic concept when we did what? The checkbox trick. That's right. All of these labels can be for these elements. And if we save and refresh now, I get this. We're going to figure out a way of not having to have this happen. This happens because we submitted the form with post, and it's like, hey, if you refresh now, it's going to submit the form again. Do you want to do that? I'm going to hit cancel, and I'm just going to hit enter right now. It's going to clear out my post, and now I can refresh without having to see that error or that warning every single time. But now, you guys, when I click on the label, it will actually activate my input. So when I click on the label, it activates my input. And I got something else that just showed up that I want to kind of fix right now. I'm going to say that my form input and my form button both have a outline of 0. This means that now when I click into them, they don't have that annoying blue blur around them. Okay? But I think we should probably still change something about them. So for instance, I'm going to make my form input have an color of, well, let's say that normally the border bottom color is light gray, but then when it is focused, it becomes dark gray. Let's try that. So now, when I refresh, it's all dark gray, or it's light gray, but then when I click into it, it becomes dark gray. Yay! Nice. We can even make that a little bit softer by making a transition
all of 0.3 seconds. Yeah. Or maybe even a little bit slower. That's dangerous. Slow animations. Yeah, I like that. Nice and slow. Cool. And then maybe we should even do something similar to our button. So we'll say that a button gets a background color of, yeah, dark. So now, when we click it, actually, let's change that from focus to active. That's probably a better way of doing that. It's not going to change anything, but it's just going to make sure that when we click it, then it does that. We could probably even then say that the color of the text inside of it becomes the light gray. Nice. Cool. All right. Our form looks good. It's got good labeling. Everything feels... How do we make this form work? Well, what I told you was that we want to solve these problems one step at a time. If you can solve assignment number 2, then you can solve the other, you can start attempting the other assignment, okay? Because if you can't solve assignment number 2, you're not ready, especially because the other ones sort of build off of it. So, what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to design some logic, okay? We have to design some CRUD logic. And CRUD logic, regardless of what you need to edit, the logic of why you would do different things is going to be the same. And you'll see what I mean when I'm done. For right now, what we're going to say is if is set post edit name. We've already seen that if there is no form submitted, then there's no post data. So if there is set a post edit name, then the form has been submitted. So then we can do some logic, okay? So if the form has been submitted, then what we want to do is we want to find our data users using the get ID, and we want to set their name to equal the post edit name. At this point in our program, we've already pulled in the data, right? So we have the data of our JSON file. And now what we can do is we can simply find the user that we're currently editing, change their name in the data to whatever is in the post data. And then we can just keep doing that. So for instance, we can change their type, their email. Classes is going to be a little bit different, because what we have to do is implode the string. Explode? Explode. Oh my goodness. On, what are we using? Comma space. And then we'll add that into our classes. And if we do that, and we save, and we refresh, what that should mean is if I come up here and I change something and I confirm, it stays. But if I go back to the list, it didn't stay. It didn't actually stay. I edited the live data. And so when it went down and actually tried to show the data from the data, I had already edited the data by the time it tried to show the data. And so it showed it in its edited form. But I didn't actually edit the file. I edited the live data, but I didn't edit the file. So, how do we edit the file? Well, we need to file, put contents. And we need to JSON encode the data. Now, if you go look at these, what you'll find is that file put contents also needs a file name. I don't think we have a file name right now. Let's just make one really quick so that we don't have to type it again. Let's say file name equals this, and that then we'll use file name here and file name here. And then we'll save and we'll refresh. And now, when I change this to Monica Geller, and I say that she is a chef, and I confirm, it's there. And when I go back to the list, it's there. It has edited the data. And you'll notice that if I go to my data and I go in here, it's not edited. This might have confused a couple of students because I edited on the server. That means the server JSON notes has been edited. So if we go to the data folder, we go to JSON notes, we get, well, it's not pretty anymore. It used to be nice and pretty and formatted and organized, and now it's not. Now it's gross. But it worked. It's got all my data there, and somewhere in there is Monica Geller. And it has edited the file. And when it edited the file and it re-encoded the JSON, it just shrunk it up and made it not pretty. Because it didn't know how to make it pretty for our standards, so it just doesn't make it pretty at all. And we are now editing the database, or the data file. It was important that you solve assignment number 2 first, because look at how easy it was. Do you see how easy it was? Let me put that differently. It's bad to say easy as a teacher. Look at how straightforward it was, okay? I gave you 4 hints, and using those 4 hints are exactly what got us here. We had to check the post, we had to edit the data, and then we had to use an explode, use a file put contents, and a JSON encode. Those were my hints. And that's all the code that it was. The big problem was figuring out this if. Figuring out how to know when to do. Now, it was possible for you to send this out to another file. You could have set the action of the form to go out to a different script, and that script could have done nothing but edit the file. That's fine. If you did that, that's fine. But learning how to write logic is an important part of programming. Okay? So if there is an edit name, then we edit the file. Now, here's the thing. This works once, but turns out that if we want to do more, we're going to have to change our logic. This logic is pretty basic, and we need better logic now. Okay? So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to update our logic, and we're going to refactor our code a bit. And as we refactor code, we're going to have to rewrite like 5 different things before we can even test it. So let's do a couple of things. One, we're going to make a thing called an empty user. An empty user is going to be one user, object, that has no values. This is for a purpose, but we're just going to do it right here. Okay? One empty user has a name, but we're not going to give it a name. It's just going to have it. It's going to have a type. It's going to have an email. And it's going to have classes. But the classes are going to be an array. Okay? So we have one empty user. One user that just has no values inside of them. And we're going to use this empty user to do a couple of things, okay? First of all, we're going to go back to the part where we show our user. Back to the part where we call show user, okay? And we're going to do some logic inside of this. And we're going to use a ternary or a conditional, however you want to call it. And we're going to say that if getID equals new question mark, we'll show an empty user. Colon. The way this works is a conditional says if this condition is true, run this code. If this condition is false, run this code. What I'm saying here is I don't care what the get ID is if it's an ID number. It can be whatever ID number it wants to be, but if it's new, we're going to do an empty user. No matter what else it is, if it's something else, we'll show a data user. Okay? Now this is how we show a user. So if we show a user and it's empty, what happens? Well, let's find out. Let's go back up to our navigation, and I'm going to say add new user. And I'm going to say question mark ID equals new. I'm going to save. I'm going to refresh. And I have an add new user button up here. And when I click it, implode invalid arguments on line 43. Shit. Let's try making this a proper array. Huh. That's weird. Let me try making this a proper array. What am I doing wrong? Did I name it wrong? Classes. It's called classes. It's called classes. User classes is an array. This is the empty user. Did I say empty user? Get ID equals new. Does it equal new? ID equals new. Get ID equals new. Hold on a second. It's an array. Invalid arguments passed. You guys. Oh! Oh! Ah, shit! Sorry. Sorry. Hi there, everybody. Funny story. We have to cast this thing to an object. Remember doing that? We're using object notation right here because it's being JSON decoded as an object. But up here we were just simply setting it to an array. Oops. Yay, there we go. Okay, so we now have an add new user form. This add new user form is empty. It says edit user, which is a little weird. I bet we can handle that in a minute, but for right now, it's fine. Okay? we've got an add new user form. So we can go to the list and we can still edit our users and they get data. But when we go to add new user, it's simply empty. It's the same form. Why would we make the form again? Instead of making the form again, just pass it no data. Okay? So we make an empty user and we pass that into the form, and now we have a form that is empty without having to remake the form. It's the exact same form, but we do have to change some things. Some things do have to change. So let's change a couple of things about this form. Let's say that we want to make a variable called add or edit. This is going to say that if the get ID equals new, then it will equal the word add, else it will equal the word edit. So we're doing another ternary or conditional right here, okay? At that point, we're going to come over to this place where we say edit user, and we're going to say add or edit user. If we save and we refresh, it says add user. If we click into somebody, fatal error. Oh shit. Wait, what? Sorry, hold on. I'm running into errors I've never run into before. This is saving that as an object. It's saving that as an object. It's saving that as an array. It is saving users as an array? Why is it saving users as an array? Oh shit! Who just submitted a new? Who just submitted a new? God damn it, you guys. Hold on a second. Download file. Stop submitting new users. Fine. Word wrap. No new. Please don't submit the form for right now. Thank you. Okay, there we go. Form is not ready to be submitted yet. So, okay. Don't mess up my lessons like that. Okay. So, what we're also going to do is we're going to go into our form and we're going to make our form have an action. The method of a form is how it sends the data, and the action of a form is where it sends the data. Okay? If you technically leave the action off, then what it will do is simply send it to the current page. It will just resend the data to the current page. But if you give it an action, then it will send it to a particular page. Okay? And what we want to do is we want to make an action for this form. And we're going to create a new variable called create or update. We're going to say that if the ID is new, we're going to create. Otherwise, we're going to update. Actually, we're going to make that lowercase. Create or update. And we're going to come into this form, and we're going to say that we want an action that is going to be question mark ID equals an ID, and the action is going to equal create or update. Now, I don't have an ID. I need to make an ID. I'm just going to quick make an ID that equals get ID. It's going to make this a whole lot easier. Here, this will be easier. So then I can say this, and I'm just going to move this up, and then for these two, I'm just going to say ID. That's easier. There we go. Cool. That's easier. That's better. There we go. Save, cancel, refresh. Okay. If we look at our form now, what you can see is that we have an action that says ID equals 2, an action equals update. We have an action that has an action. And unfortunately, this is a mildly confusing thing, so let me just say that forms have an action of where to send the stuff. We're going to create some code in our logic of an action of what we want to do with our code, with our data, okay? When we go to the add new user form, we can see that it says action equals create. And when we're on the previous page, it says action equals update. So we now have two different actions in our backend. So let's change our logic, because we need to change our logic, okay? We're going to make a new if. And we're going to say that if is set posts, no, if is set get action. Then we want to do something. And if action equals update, then we want to do this code. So let's talk about this new logic. The problem with our previous logic is that we then had two different forms that had two different things that they needed to do. One wanted to update the data, one wants to create new data. They technically both have the same names in their form labels. So it would have been difficult to separate those. So what we're going to do is, rather than making two different forms, rather than making two different actions and all that kind of stuff in like HTML, we're going to make two different actions in our get. And we're going to say that one action is update. And then another action will be create. We're going to copy the previous action and say that the action is to create. Now, this is going to be a fairly simple process as well. What we're going to do is we're going to come down here, and instead of finding data from the database and setting the values to that, we're going to get our empty user. And we're going to set the values of that object. Every single time this page gets created, there's a new empty user. Every single time this page loads, the empty user is set back to an empty user. So every single time we come here, we'll be able to reset the values of that empty user. And then we can file put contents. But the problem is that we haven't actually added this empty user into our database. So we need to add the empty user into our database. Well, how do we do that? Well, we've learned a couple of different ways of editing content, but there's something we need to do first. We need to like push it onto the page, but once we add this user, where do we go from there? Do we refresh the empty user page after we've added a new user? I feel like after we've added a new user, we should go to that user's edit page, which is not the same page we're on. And we don't know what that page is, because it doesn't exist yet. So what will that page be? Well, let me ask you guys something. What is the first index of any array? 0 is correct. I want you to all say that out loud. What's the first index of any array? 0. Say it out loud. 0.
0.
What's the first index of any array?
0.
0. It's always 0. 0 is the first index of an array. What's the last index of an array? What's the last index of an array with 4 items?
3.
3. What's the last index of an array with 532 items? 531. What's the last index of an array with 700,532 items?
N minus 1.
Length minus 1 is correct. Length minus 1 is the last index of an array. So what's the next index of an array?
N.
Length. Length will always be the next index of an array. So, let's do this. Oh, by the way, you guys, write yourself a note. That was all good information. Okay, so let's make a new ID that is going to equal the current count of data users. That's going to be our next ID. And then, let's take the data users and let's push onto it our empty user. Now, I'm going to show you two lines right here. There is also a possibility of doing an array push. We could array push onto the data users and pass in the empty user. These two lines are technically the same. They do the exact same thing. There's a lot of different ways to write code, and if you see one example over the other, you shouldn't necessarily be too confused by it. This is the sexy way of doing it. This is the correct way of doing it. So, whatever. At that point, we're going to file put contents, and then I want us to go somewhere. So we're going to change our header. Now, something very important. If you're writing notes or taking notes, you want to know something about the PHP header. Whenever you use a PHP header, you cannot use it if any other text has been written to the page. If any other text has already been written to the page, like an echo statement or a print P, header will fail. Header can only be used if it's the first thing written to the document. There can't be written to the actual output document, okay? So there can't be any other text. There can't be like a space before your PHP tag or anything like that. Any other text written to the actual output document will break the header, and the header won't work. So header has to be the first thing written to the document. And so at this point, we are actually printing P, our get and post. So we're going to have to comment those out. Those aren't going to work anymore. We already know they're working, okay? So those were for testing, where they're working. So now let's comment those out. And then we're going to change a header. And the header we're going to change to is going to be a location. You can learn all about header on your own. There's lots of interesting things you can do with it. But what we can do with location is re-navigate ourselves. We can basically navigate ourselves to a new page as if we had clicked an A tag. Okay? So, don't act like you're not eating in my class. You're trying to be.
I have it.
I'm super slick about it. We're going to go back to the useradmin.php to question mark ID equals the new ID we just made. And this should allow us to now add a new user. Please don't everybody do this all at once. We go back to the list. We got our and it's there. Hooray! Here's an interesting question. Did that actually work? You guys, this didn't technically make an array because I didn't have a space right here. Not that that really mattered. It didn't show up as an error, but I technically didn't have a space there, and I wrote it so that it has to have a space. It's not a big deal. It means our functionality is a little incomplete, but whatever. We're not using that as an array anywhere. We're just showing it, so it's fine. Okay, well, let's do the same thing up above. Let's say that when somebody updates some data, then they're going to go back to the ID of the, well, for there we'll just do the get ID because they won't be changing IDs, okay? So we'll just use the get ID up there. And now, when we submit our form, it submits, but now when we refresh, there's no confirm form resubmit thing anymore. By allowing our header to redirect ourselves once we've completed our update, we remove the post data by navigating back to the page. So when the form submits, it navigates back to the page. When we do our logic, it updates our database. And then when our logic is done, it resubmits the page again, but this time with no form data. No post data is present anymore. And so now we can just refresh. And now there's no weird, bad user experience by submitting the form, and then if they wanted to refresh, there would have been this weird confirmation that somebody might not have understood. Or, even worse, it would have submitted the form again. So, we can now add users. Somebody added an empty user. Good job, you guys. and we're now able. By the way, please, if you edit the original data, please edit it back. I know you all want to edit my data, but if you edit anything, please edit it back after you're done. Okay. We can now edit data and edit data, and yay! That's logic. Yay! So what do we have now? We have create. We have read. Read was always there. We have update. What's left? Delete. I could do a whole day on delete. Delete is way more complicated than any of you designers, UX designers, are ever willing to give it credit for until you have to run into it. Okay? Delete is super complicated and important. Where do you put delete? Where does delete go? Where does delete go on our page? Let me ask you. Let's think about this, okay? Where does delete go? Where? Does it go on this page? It's an interesting question. How does that make you feel about this data if you can just delete it from this list? How does it, as a user, how does it make you feel about data if you can just delete it from the list? What if you have to work really hard? How does it make you feel about deleting your Facebook account if you have to work really hard about deleting it? Some people, that makes them frustrated, but most people, it just means that it's super hard to delete this. I don't want to delete it necessarily, okay? There's also the aspect of mistake deleting. How do you handle the idea of a mistake delete? Where do we put delete? Well, we could put delete all over the place, okay? We could put it on this list, and then somebody could just delete, 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 delete. Is that a good idea? Maybe for certain kinds of data. I don't know that that's a good idea for a user list. I don't think an administrator should just be able to go, fuck all you. That seems like a bad idea for this particular list, okay? And it's important that you remember that when you design things, you're not designing for you. You're designing for somebody who has no fucking clue what goes on in your head, okay? And it's super important that you remember that. So, where do we put delete? Well, that's a very interesting question. Let me ask you something. Do we confirm delete?
Yeah. Yes.
When was the last time you had to confirm a delete?
After submit.
From where? When was the last time you had to confirm deleting something?
After click delete button.
What? Trash? I don't have to confirm putting anything in the trash. I have to confirm emptying the trash. That's not the same thing. Well, account, you have to go through hoops and ladders to even get anywhere near deleting an account. Do you have to confirm deleting an email in Gmail? No? What does happen? No. No, that's not what happens immediately. What happens when you delete an email in Gmail? No.
Undo.
There's a notification that says, are you sure? It just says undo. It doesn't stop you. It just has a quick option of, did you mean to do that? And that's very different than a confirmation. You guys, the idea of what to do next after deleting is just as big of a topic as the actual process of deleting. Okay? Because confirming 50 deletes would be super fucking annoying. Okay? Confirming 3 deletes in a row would be way annoying. Delete, confirm, confirm, go away. How do you delete things on iOS? Do any of you have an iPad? One person have? Anyone else have an iPad? Does anyone draw on the iPad? Sometimes? Anyone use Procreate? How do you delete in Procreate? Anyone know? Do you know? How do you delete in Procreate?
Don't you hold it?
Yeah.
The artboard.
Nope.
You have to go to your iCloud folder.
Nope. Swipe right. Or swipe left. Do you guys use anything where you swipe left to delete? Notifications. Swipe to delete those. Anything else? Messages, other kinds of stuff. I think you can swipe to delete Google Messages on the app. I think on the mobile app you can swipe to delete emails. But on the desktop you have to click a little thing that only shows up after you hover over something, right? Have you guys ever thought about this stuff before? Once you actually think about it, the last time you had to confirm to delete something was a long time ago. You don't confirm deleting things. Okay, how do you delete a post on Facebook? Get out of my class. I haven't used Facebook in a long time either. Does anyone use Facebook? How do you delete a post in Facebook? No? Hmm? No, you don't. I don't think so. But more importantly, where is it found?
Aren't there like 3 little...
There's a shish kebab menu. That you, if the other one's a hamburger, that one's a shish kebab. Okay? There's a shish kebab menu, and you click it, and then there's an edit and delete. I haven't checked. How do you delete things on WeChat? Swipe left?
Yeah, and then
Interesting. How do you delete things from Twitter? I don't think, can you even? You can't edit them. I think you can. Can you delete them? I don't even know. You must be able to delete them. If you've never thought it before, I want you to do some research this week, just for fun. Go through your apps that you use every day, think about how, and write down and think about how they delete, okay? Because nobody wants to have to confirm things, unless it's a super big thing, right? Confirming things like deleting 500 things is one thing, right? If you're about to delete 500 things, maybe there should be a confirmation. But if you're about to delete one thing, confirmations suck. No one wants that. So, many apps will hide delete behind a secondary action. So you'll do something and then delete. That is the way that you make sure that there's a more or less confirmation, is that they have to do one thing first and then they do the delete. That's why a lot of places, I actually hate anything that deletes on swipe. I would much rather show delete on swipe than delete on swipe. I would rather show delete, show delete, show delete. Except for notifications. Fuck notifications. Get rid of those. But emails that swipe and delete, I hate that on Gmail, that you swipe and it goes away, because oftentimes I'm just trying to show something or figure out where I'm supposed to go, because left and right do 2 different things. It's annoying.
That's not delete, that's archive.
What?
In Gmail, you swipe to left. That's not delete, that goes to the archive. Because it's annoying.
You can modify it.
I'm pretty sure it used to be delete. But I don't know. Yeah, it looks like it's archives.
Yeah.
So that's even worse, because it didn't delete. just made it go away, and now I can't find it ever again. Anyways, delete is a much bigger subject than you were probably ever willing to give it priority before, okay? So how can we do delete? Well, we could just put delete right there. Why? Because fuck it, this is just a test. Okay, we could just design delete right there. Or we could try to do swipe. How many of you know how to swipe in JavaScript? Exactly, so we're not going to do a swipe. We could do like a shish kebab that popped up a menu. You know what, you guys? We already technically have a secondary step on all of these items. What's that? Visit. Visit is already technically a secondary step. And that means that although having a delete on that page might be a bad idea, it's much better than having it on this page for our current knowledge and use case. So let's go to this page. Oh no, let's not delete that user. That's a good user. Let's delete this empty user that somebody made. Okay, where could we put delete? This is also a big subject. Where do we put delete on this page? There are so many options. Should it be a button? In the upper right corner or the lower right corner? Lower? Lower right corner for delete? Under the button or above the button? Oh, so many options. Should it be text? Should it say delete? Should it be an icon?
Yeah.
What icon? Fuck no, not an X. How dare you? Very important, you guys.
Trash.
What does X signify in most UI and UX? Close, not delete. It's very important that we not use an X because especially on this page, someone might confuse an X for just close or cancel. That would be a really bad thing. Especially because this looks like a pop-up window, even though it's not. It's totally navigated somewhere. This looks like a pop-up window because it's a card. Okay? So definitely not an X. Or at least not with our current interface. It's possible we could use an X in some other like interior interface, but not right here. It looks like close, not like delete. Okay? So what should it be? Trash can. Okay? If you're going to use iconography for delete, use a trash can. Okay? In fact, many designers these days would tell you to use both an icon and the word, just in case. Okay? What color should delete be?
Green.
It's tough to say. I think for big things it should be red. I think for anything else it's fine if it's just a trash can. I don't think it necessarily needs to be red if it's anything small or anything relatively small. If you're deleting all of the users on a page, that should probably be red. Hey, stop. This is an interesting it's such a bigger subject. Okay? So for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put delete on the page. Okay? I'm not going to work really hard at it. I am going to actually put it on the opposite side of back. So back is going to be on the left, and on the top right, I'm going to put delete. But I'm going to make it look like it's something other than a back button. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and up here, I'm going to make a class of flex parent, and then I am going to make a class of flex child, and then I'm going to make a flex none. I said a flex none, and then inside of that, I am going to put a link inside of brackets for just right now. I don't want to design it like anything, I just want to put it inside brackets. And I'm going to make that say delete. And I'm going to make that go to user admin ID equals the ID and action equals delete. Don't click that button, it won't do anything yet. Now, there are a lot of options for how this could go down. Right now I have very limited options with the time that I have, so I'm just going to do this for right now. It is important that you understand that where you put this matters, how big you make it matters, how important you make it matters. If it's a great big button, someone wants to click it. So don't make it important, right? You can make confirmations red. Hey, do you want to delete your Facebook account? But you don't necessarily want somebody to think about deleting this. You want them to have the ability. You don't want it to be in their minds necessarily. Okay? So we can just delete it. In fact, having delete behind a shish kebab menu here might be the best of all solutions. So that there's a click into the page, a click to choose, and then at that point they've clicked 3 times, they fucking want to do this. Okay? So I could now delete this user. It won't do anything right now because I don't have an action for that. So let's make that action. How are we going to make the action of delete? Well, you guys, the action of delete is actually also, the action is a little bit more complicated as well. I'm going to come over here and I am going to make the action for delete. And then I am going to say that I want to array splice the data users at the point of the get ID for one item. If you've never used array splice before, it's a way of pulling data and inserting data out of any arbitrary place in an array. There's a lot of, you can go look up more about it. It's a useful tool to know how to do. But we are now doing something that's a little bit important to understand. We are now making this so that this tool is kind of only useful for one person. Or I should say one person at a time. We are now making something that is definitely not a good idea for you to do for multiple users. And here's why. If we delete this user, we're selecting users based on their index in the array of users. If we have a user or an administrator who has clicked into user 2, and then we delete user 1, administrator, if we have 2 administrators and one has clicked into user 2 and one has just deleted user 1, the second administrator is still on user 2. But if they then try to edit, user 1 has been deleted. Their place in the array has been moved back, and so user 2 is now technically what was user 3. That means that one user, one administrator can effectively use this application. But if 2 of them are ever working at the same time, there is an ever so small possibility that if one deletes something from the data, it would fuck up the data that someone else is using. And that would be bad. Okay? So this is fine for prototyping, for doing a tool for yourself, or for making something that only one person will ever use at any one time, or that doesn't have deleting. If there's anything that can be added and edited all day long, but there's no deleting, then this would be fine. But if there was ever a chance of deleting, this is bad. So we're not going to try to fix this problem. We just need to understand that it exists. Okay? It's an interesting database issue that is solved by having a database have IDs. IDs that are auto-incrementing and therefore always unique. Okay? So, at that point, we can file put content. Because we've edited the array. And then, where should we navigate to? Well, there's no more users, so let's navigate back to the list. And now, if I refresh, I should be able to delete this guy out of the list. That is CRUD. And guess what, you guys? You even got some UX talk today. I never get to teach UX, except that this is my one day of teaching UX. Okay, so, important thing before we go on break. 1, this has nothing directly to do with your final. This particular project is something you should all get working because it's fun, but also you should also understand that my website runs on this exact concept. You could start making your blog, your journal for your portfolio today, right now. With just this CRUD. It would just be a different database. It would be a different JSON file with a different amount of data. You could start making it right now, if you really wanted to. And I suggest that anybody who has a mild interest in programming is going to want to try to figure this out. Okay? And making a journal is an easy way of starting off into this progress. I started programming with PHP way before I ever did anything with JavaScript. And the first thing I ever made was, well, it was a guest book. A guest book is something with that everybody is able to add to, everybody is able to read from, but nobody can delete from, was the idea. It was like everyone who visited my website was able to add a comment, and then everybody saw all of those, and they just kept on going forward as you went forward. It was really easy, okay? After that, I made a journal. After that, I made a forum, and then after that, I didn't do programming for like 10 years. Because I was doing art. It doesn't matter. But that's the progression of things, okay? So, but 2, this has nothing directly to do with your final project, okay? But I am going to give you an updated assignment for your final project. All of you are going to, by your final, need to have a administration page for your products. So in other words, an administrator should be able to log into this, well, we're not going to do login, forget the word login. An administrator should be able to find their way to the administration page and then be able to just list out the products. This isn't a user buying things. This is an administrator editing things, okay? So just list out all the products and be able to click into one of them and edit their information and be able to add a new product into the database. This is going to be a requirement of your 608 final. And I'm telling you right now, it won't edit a text file. It will edit the database, so the MySQL database. You'll get more information about this later, but for right now, what all of you need to know is that this is going to be an assignment, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it until Module 14. So you need to be trying to figure it out up until that point. Okay? So right now what we have is a page that doesn't directly relate to our final, but there's going to be a corollary page on the final which will be editing the products for an administrator. Okay? It's going to have a list of the products, but it's not going to be like buying. It's just going to be a straight list of the products. And then you're going to be able to click into one and edit it, or make a new product in the database. And you're going to have to get this working because in your final presentation, you have to add one new product into your database during the final presentation. Okay? So, you're going to have a number of weeks to try to work through this. All you really have to understand is that the logic of this administration page will be exactly the same. This, and this, and this will basically be exactly the same. The difference will be that instead of editing to a text file, you'll be querying the database. So I want to encourage you all to try to figure out how to do this before Module 14. Okay? And don't miss Module 14, because that's when I'll be showing you how to do it. Yes?
And just make sure that this is like adding the product, is like adding to like our, like the page, right?
To the website, yeah.
To the, like the product links.
Yeah. Yes.
So not the product detail, but it should include the product detail, right?
You know how this has, a username and a
Yeah,
type? So
yeah.
there would be a product name and a price and images and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So should it be shown on the product on this page?
Yeah. As the newest product added into the site.
So
That's why we have dates on all of our products, so that we can see which one was the last product to be added in. Have we not done data yet?
No.
We're going to do that tonight. We're going to have dates in all our products. Yes?
And like the administration page is only us, like how to.
Yes, so that's right. Now, for the final presentation, we're going to add a link to the administration page, which is something that you would not do on your actual thing, is give users a link to your administration page.
Okay.
But for the purposes of our final, we're just going to add a link to the administration page onto our site so that an administrator can go use it. But it would be inappropriate for you to do that on an actual website. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to do databases. What? log into our servers, and we need to get into our cPanel or control panel. Okay? You guys should have been in here before, but if you haven't been, we need to get in here now. Okay? So let's all go into our control panel. There's one more thing I want you guys to. We did something in here before when we turned on our PHP errors. You guys remember when we did that? I just found a recent thing that I want you guys to all also do. I want you to go to your thing if you're on GoDaddy. This is just for GoDaddy people. And I want you to find your way to the select PHP version option. Same way we used it to turn on errors. And we're going to do something in there which is, we are going to change this part right here that says MySQLi, and we're going to change that to ND MySQLi. This is only relevant to people on GoDaddy. If you're on GoDaddy, I want you to find your way back to the select PHP version, and then in those settings, I want you to turn off MySQLi and turn on ND MySQLi. This is going to become important later, but
Turn off or turn on?
turn off MySQLi, turn on ND MySQLi.
If I'm Bluetooth, what's it? PHP admin?
I don't think it matters on Bluetooth. We'll find out later.
Okay.
And no, it was select PHP version. Not PHP selector. Oh. Are you on GoDaddy?
No.
Then don't worry about it. That's it. For people on GoDaddy. Okay? But all of us want to go to our cPanel. Okay? We all want to get to our this page. Wherever this page is, we want to find our way here, wherever we have a whole bunch of these options. Yes, what's that? Okay. Now, that was just something. Okay, what we want to do is we want to find our way to something that says databases. Many people have different servers. We want to find our way to something that says databases. Find your way to the databases portion of your cPanel or control panel. Okay? Somewhere in here, there should be some databases options. Now, we don't want to do the MySQL database wizard because we are just tanks in this party. Instead, we want to go to our MySQL databases. There should be something on there that says databases or MySQL databases or MySQL or something like that. Okay? We want to click in on that one right now. And from there, we need to do a couple of things. We need to do 3 things, in fact. Are you ready? Here they come. Make a new database. Make a database user. Connect the user to the database. We got to do those 3 things, okay? We've got to make a new user. We got to make a database. Those 2 things don't matter the order. Just do those first. And then we need to connect the user to the database. So, when you create a new database, what you want to do is make sure that you create a database that has 2 things. 1, your name. 2, this class, okay? So basically make it like your username underscore this class. So your username wnm608. Okay? And then create database. Make a new database and then say something, your name underscore this database, and then create the database. Okay? And then you should see a bunch of databases, or one, show up in your database list. When you look at current databases, you should then see a database in your list. Cool. However, didn't like that one. No space, no slash. What's wrong with you? One name. So underscore if you want a name. So yeah.
name 是自己的名字，不要下划线。
Okay, you'll notice that once you've made your database, it should say that there are no privileged users. It is important that you notice that it says there are no privileged users because that means you have not added a user onto it. So we need to now make users. So go down to the place where it says new user. We want to add a new user. You want this to be the exact same name as the database you just made. Okay? Make it the exact same name. Give it a password that is the exact same word. Give it the exact same name as a password. Okay? Don't try to make a cool password. You will forget it. We want to remember this password. Alright? And it's not like it's a super big deal. Nobody even knows you exist right now.
Yeah. 跟你一样。跟你的。
You don't need that password. You don't need to save the password, by the way. Okay. You guys, once you have made a new user and a new database, you need to add the user to the database. Okay? You need to find the user and the database and add them together. So, go to this place that says add user to database. Down. Oh, you have it. And then you're going to add. And when you do that, there's going to be a page that has a whole bunch of permissions. You want to select all permissions. And then make changes. Select all permissions, and then make changes. And then you can go back. And now when you go to your database list, it should show that there is a privileged user on the database.
You said add the user and.
Add the user to the database.
And
So find the user.
privilege?
And you didn't make a user. That's a database. Make a user. If you don't see a user, then you need to make a user.
And let's add new.
So yours already has the name.
Yeah, I just created one.
Okay, so now go up.
Should it be different as mine or
Okay. Yeah. Add user to database. You should have made them both the same name, so that should be the same. Okay, that should
I
be the
can
What?
I cannot it's select the name.
This is select the user. Did you make a user?
I made it.
You made a database.
Okay, I didn't make it.
So you made a database, now you need to make a user.
Okay, what's the name for the user?
All privileges. And then make changes.
那个 MySQL user 这个名字啥呀？
And now you can go back.
那个 user 是啥呀？这个你名字
There you go. Privileged user
这个 database。
on the database.
哦，也同一个，但我不能下划线呢。
那就不要下划线。
My
好像
database.
不能下划线，
就不要下划线。
下不了好 OK。
Did you make a new database?
也不能有608呢。
It's the same name.
也太多了吗？
It's fine for now.
Oh, we just made like just
You've already got your username right there. So yours already gives the username. So now you just need wnm608. And then just do that and that.
Just type in
我要
user
前面的吗？
and database.
怕你忘记。
哎，我觉得这个好难呀。我密码超简单的，我要把它抄下来。
这跟你的 website 的名字一样。
website 没有哪这么多。
It just makes it real website. Oh my goodness. You guys, first of all, what is that? What is that? Are you buttering in my classroom? Are you getting an onion bagel all over my classroom
然
table?
后是 add 了，对不对？
Same thing! It's got onions on it.
就好了。
You guys, just so we're clear, you make a new database. You give it a name that is unique because you're on a shared server. And if you make it a database name that is too generic, everyone else will make it, and then you'll share it with somebody else, and that's a bad thing. Okay? So you make a new database. You give it a name of your name underscore, and if you're on Bluehost, it looks like they'll just give you the your name underscore. Okay? And then this class. So it should be like Hamilton underscore wnm608. Okay? Then you make a user. You have to add the user to the database, so you have to make a new user. So you make a new user, and it's just the exact same word. Why? Because it doesn't matter. All we need is add user. Add user, okay? With add password. It doesn't really super matter, okay? We're just trying to make it and move forward. What you should see is databases with privileged user. You should see a database with a privileged user, and it should be the one that you just set up. Okay? Should be a database with a privileged user in your database list. When you go back to the database list, you should see a database with a privileged user. If you don't see a privileged user, that means you either didn't make a user or you didn't connect the user to the database. So you need to go back to the thing that says add user to database or add database to user. I don't remember which one.
How can we connect? How can we connect?
And then choose all privileges, and then make changes. Okay, so. Did you figure it out? Looks good. You have a privileged user? Yes. So you got a MySQL database, you got a MySQL user. Cool. Looks good. Right? It looks right. Yeah. You're going to need to take note of that, because that's going to be different than what we do. Okay, everybody. So, at that point, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the cPanel, and we're going to find our way to the phpMyAdmin. Okay? What is important for you to understand about phpMyAdmin is that phpMyAdmin is not your phpMyAdministrator. Okay? It is a MySQL administrator written in PHP. Okay? phpMyAdmin is a MySQL administrator written in PHP. Now, when we get into phpMyAdmin, what we should see is some databases over here on the left. I'm currently on the Academy's data, or the WNM's database. So over here we have a whole bunch of tables and stuff. Whee! And what you should see is one database. You should see your database. If you don't see your database, you need to go back and do the previous steps. Okay? You see your database?
But where should be empty, right?
It should be empty. On the left there? No, you didn't click into phpMyAdmin. Go to the phpMyAdmin. So once you've made a database, so you need to do everything. Get that cup off of my table. Get that cup off of my table. I don't care.
If
Get
you
it off the
have
table.
two databases, do we need to delete the other one? Or we can just
No, you just really overtell it.
Should I connect to the wnm like server? Like school server?
What? No. What? No, I didn't say do that. Just connect to your phpMyAdmin. You should see a database. Here, I didn't make a database, but I'll make one now. I'll make a new database called Classroom. And I'll create the database. What? It already exists. Son of a bitch. Call it wnm Classroom. This is why you have to. Sometimes you're on shared service and that database already exists. So you have to make it a unique name. Okay, there we go. I got a wnm Classroom. I'm going to make a new user. I'm going to call it wnm Classroom. I'm going to call it wnm Classroom. I'm going to call it wnm Classroom. And I'm going to create the user. And then I'm going to connect the user to the database. Nope, that was modifying. There we go. Where are we? Oh, there we go. WNM classroom, add, all privileges, make changes, go back. There we go. We should have WNM classroom with WNM classroom. And now, when I refresh over here, I get WNM classroom. Okay, awesome. So when you guys click into your database over here on the left, you should see a page like this. So what we need to do is we need to talk about what a database is. A database is that. But more appropriately, a database is that. I say database. A database is made up of columns and rows. Okay? So we got a database. Yes?
Yes.
We've got columns or fields. And we've got rows or entries. Okay? So we've got columns and rows on a database. Technically, though, this is a table in the database. Okay. These are all the words we need to know. We need to know all of these words. Okay? So, we got a database that has inside of it a table, that has inside of it columns, that have entries or rows. Okay? Now, what does this look like to you? A table? Anything else?
Form.
Did someone say bingo? Any of you use spreadsheets? Or Excel? Or Google Sheets? Any of you use that stuff? Do you do your finances in spreadsheets? You should start. If you don't know how to do spreadsheets, you should all do it. Every adult should know how to use a spreadsheet. Okay? I mean that in the most literal sense I can possibly mean it. Every adult person should know how to use spreadsheets. Okay? So, this is essentially a spreadsheet. Let's consider a database a spreadsheet file, like an Excel file. Okay? So, a database is a spreadsheet file. In a spreadsheet file, you can usually have multiple sheets. Multiple sheets inside of the spreadsheet file. Okay? We can consider each of those a table for our intents and purposes. Okay? A table is one set of data. Inside of a table, you can have columns of types of data, and you have entries of actual data being put in. Okay? Your columns are the kind of data that could be inserted, and the rows are the inserted data. Now, some people format spreadsheets weird. Forget about those people. We're talking about columns of types and rows of entries. Okay? So, we have to keep that visual in our brain. That is what a database is. So, a database for us is a set of tables, maybe connected, maybe not, that each table has its own types of data, and each table has its own entries of data. Okay? So what we need to do is we've made a database, a place for our data to go. We need to make a table. So let's make a table right now. For right now, we're going to call this tester. And we're going to give it a number of columns. It doesn't actually matter how many we give it right now, but I'm going to give it 6. Okay? And I'm going to click go. And you're going to come into a page that looks like this. Okay? Now, what's important for you to understand is that right now, this page that we're on is creating columns. Okay? So right now, this page is defining the data of a new table. It's not defining entries. We're not adding data. We're defining what kind of data we're expecting. Okay? When we wrote JSON, it didn't care what kind of data we give it. Did it really care whether it was a string or a number? Not really. We did, but the data didn't. This cares. cares what kind of data you use? So very first thing, if you're writing notes, make a whole new page. Make a whole new page for your notes. And on this page, what I want you to write is ID. It's so important, I want you to make a whole page about it. Even if there's nothing else on it. Even if there's nothing but the word ID, I want you to know that it's super important, okay? ID is the way that we can beat the problem with our array that we were just doing with delete. Okay? When we talked about that deleting from the array, we said that there was a problem with it. And the problem was that if two people were using it at the same time, it's possible that one person could delete an item and then the other person would be on the wrong item. And it would fuck up the database. Okay? We need all IDs in the database to not be pretty, but be unique. Every ID in the database needs to be unique. IDs need to be unique. Now, what that means is we're going to make them an integer. An integer is a solid number, a number without decimal points. And for right now, we're just going to give it something like 11. It doesn't actually matter. This is something like 1,000,000. Does anybody know how many digits are in 1,000,000? 7? So how many, what number did I just write out? If there's what number has 11 digits in it? Who cares? It's big. We'll never reach that many items in our database. Okay? More appropriately, we're going to scroll over to the right, or look over to the right, and we're going to see this thing that says index. Do you see that? This is super important. When you make an ID, you must set the index of that ID to primary. If you fuck this up, you're going to have to delete your whole table and start over again. When we do that, a thing pops up. Click go. And we now have a primary index on our ID. And at that point, we're going to click this little AI right here. AI stands for auto incrementing. And what that means is that our ID is going to be a number that always goes up, even if something gets deleted. Our numbers don't go back to perfect numbers. Our numbers are always moving forward. The ID always moves forward, which means that if I make 100 items and then I delete 50 of them, I'm still at 101. I don't go back down to 51. I'm still at 101. And the other items are just gone, okay? And that means that if you delete every other item, every other ID is going to be wrong. But that's good, because that means our IDs will always link to the exact thing. The IDs don't change. They're always unique and they're always increasing. Some students get really irked about this, and they're like, no, I want my IDs to be perfect. Fuck your IDs. They just need to be unique, okay? Your IDs just need to be unique. And it's really important that they are. So we have auto-incrementing primary index IDs. If you need to write all that down, okay? The ID must be the primary index, and it must be auto-incrementing. And I'm telling you right now that if you fuck this up, I'm going to have to delete your table and you're going to have to start over again. Okay, so we have the ID. It's a primary index. What else do we want here? Well, we're just going to go through a bunch of kinds of data. Okay, we're going to make a whole bunch of kinds of data right now. What kinds of data might we want? Well, we might want. By the way, we're already in a table called testers, so we don't have to namespace these names. The table itself is the namespace. Okay, so we don't have to say tester name. We're already in the table tester. Okay. But we do need to do a different data type than integer. And what we're going to choose is variable character. A variable character is something that we don't know how long it'll be, but we don't want to give it too much length, but we also want it to be possibly shorter than the length that we give it. It can't be bigger than the length that we give it, but it can be smaller. Okay? And in that case, we're going to give the name, well, who thinks they have the most characters in their name? Who thinks they have the longest name? Probably somebody from a Southeast Asian island. Those are really long names. Anybody? No? Who thinks they have the shortest name? Who doesn't like participating in class? Who has the longest name? Nobody wants to think it's them? Nobody likes to think about their names. It's cool. We can still be friends. Whatever. my name is Hamilton Klein. If I go by my full name, it has a length of 20 characters. That's a pretty long name. I don't think we're going to run into anybody that has more than 30 characters in their name. That's a pretty fucking long name. You got like 7 names in there if you've got 30 characters. Okay? So we're going to do our first programming joke. We're going to say 32 right here. You guys, making your numbers here, it's actually good to use even programming numbers. And even programming numbers are numbers that are based in 8, or more appropriately 16, or more appropriately 4, or more appropriately 2. You guys, what's the numbering system we use for colors? What is the numbering system we use for colors? Hexadecimal. Does anyone know what hexadecimal means? 6 of 10, or 16. Okay? So, our hexadecimal numbering system is a base 16 numbering system. That means it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. F stands for what number? Fucking wrong. 15. F stands for 15. So what number does FF stand for? Final Fantasy. No. Very wrong. 255. What's the maximum number a color can be in Photoshop? In RGB, when you do RGB in Photoshop, what's the maximum number the color can be? 255. That's right, because that stands for FF, or 16 times 16. Okay? Well, whatever. Minus 1. You guys, 16 times 2 is 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1028. Have you heard these numbers before? 1056? I think it's 1056. You've heard these numbers before. These are the numbers that you use when you buy, like, hard disks and flash drives. Those are all those numbers. They're all a base 16 number. Okay? And it is fun in programming to use base 16 numbers. It's why Final Fantasy games back in the day had a maximum of 255 because that was FF and they thought that was fun. Because it's Final Fantasy. So, we're going to give it 32 characters. We don't need to do anything over here for this. It's just 32 characters is the max for that variable character. What else can we do? Email. How long is an email? Well, it could be a lot more. We'll give it 128. Does anybody know how many characters is 128? It's a lot. Does anybody know how many characters a tweet used to be? 140 was correct. Do you know how long that is? Longer than most domain names. Okay? Does anyone know what the current length of tweets are? What?
Double that.
Is it double that? I thought it was even more. Whatever, it's a lot more. Okay? It's a lot of characters. So, we're going to give this 128. That's a decently long email. You'd have to really try hard in order to get an email that long. What else could we put here? Well, right now, we're kind of doing a name and an email, and that's kind of irrelevant to our... But we're just doing a test, okay? We're just kind of trying to learn about stuff. So let's do a price. Is a price an integer? Could it be for your site? Could a site have an integer for a price? Depends on how much you're selling things for. If you're selling things for $200, maybe you just want to sell it for $200. Maybe you don't want to deal with decimal points, right? But let's say that we want to deal with decimal points. Let's go to the and then nobody went to jail because they burned the building down. But you should see that movie, Office Space. It's a great movie. You'll love it. Or not, I don't know. So, when we do our price, we can do it as a decimal or as an integer. It depends on your app and how you want to work it. Okay? So, at that point, what else could we do? Well, we could have something like a category. So this could be like pants, shoes, shirts, all that kind of stuff. We don't need multiple tables for different kinds of data because for the most part what we should be creating is a product table. And a product table can probably handle multiple types of data. So for instance, if the category is shirts, then it will have an option for like size. But if the product is a painting, it will have an option for like height and width or something like that, right? You can have all of that possible data in your database, and then something that needs it will use it, and something that doesn't need it will ignore it. And that way we can only have one table. So we don't need multiple tables for our database. In fact, you guys, for our final, we're going to only be required to have one table. And that's going to be products, which you're going to make this week. Okay? So we could make that a variable character. We could just make it like 16 characters long. So for instance, we should be able to fit any words in there like shirts and shoes and banana pants. What else could we do in here? Well, we should probably do a date create. I am namespacing this. This is a date, and it is the create date. Okay? Notice that says date, not data. Date create. And at that point, I am going to make that not a date. Okay. What else could we do here? Well, we could do like a main image or like an image main. And you guys, I'm just going to make this like a variable character. And I'm going to make this like 256. This is like a, I actually don't know what this will be, but here's the way I suggest you store images in your database. Don't. If you look up online how to store an image in a database, you'll find a lot of information about blobs and all that kind of stuff, and it's super inefficient, and I don't suggest you do it. What we're going to do for our database is we're going to just store URLs for images in our database. Okay? We'll just store a URL for an image in the database, and that's good enough. So for this, I might just store, you know, banana main.jpg or something like that. You'll see that in a second. But what I might want is something else. Like I might want image other. So maybe this is more images. So maybe I have a main image, but maybe then I also have even more images that are possibly able to be stored in there. So maybe I'll give enough space for a couple more images to be able to store it in there. So for instance, if you have multiple images on your thing, you can just store them as a comma separated list, like we did with our array. It's just a comma separated list of like the classes array that we just did in that last assignment. We can just store it as commas and then multiple images in between commas. Okay? I'll do one more. And here I'll do a description. And for the description, we could simply do a text. We won't give it a length. We'll just say it's text. I don't know how fucking much, but it's going to be a lot. Now you guys, this is a basic rundown of how to add data into a database. There is a possibility that you'll need to do other stuff, but here's what I want. Every one of you needs to make a table this week, and that table is going to be called products, and it's not going to be called anything else. It's not going to be called my products, or my special products, or hey, these are my products. It's going to be called products, okay? It's very important that you call that, otherwise you're going to have a bad time for the rest of the semester. You're going to make a new table this week called products, and you're going to make your database. I don't know what yours is, but here's a bunch of kinds of data that you might enter into it. There's two things that I need there to be. One, an ID, and two, a date. Probably a price, probably a name or something else like that, okay? But in essence, you guys are going to have to make your own database, and there needs to be an ID and a date, and then all your other data, whatever it is, okay? So for right now, let's try to save this. And hopefully it works. If it worked, yay! If it didn't, nah, it sucks. It's just a tester. You'll have to do it again probably. Now, when we look at the tester now has, well, it's got a structure on it, okay? If we click into the tester table, over here on the left, we should now see a structure on that table, which, by the way, if you don't see the tester table, click this little refresh button right there to refresh your database to make it show up. We should then be able to click into our tester table, and then inside of here we should see the structure. So the structure is the columns of our database, of our table, okay? We haven't entered any data yet. All we've done is set up the kinds of data that will be in there. Notice my key right here. My ID is my primary key. If you don't see the key on yours later, delete it, start again. Yes?
I have a problem. It shows an error on my screen.
That's bad. Okay, I'm going to move forward. So, notice that if we click Browse, there's nothing there. It says Select Asterisk from Tester. And this is your first bit of actual MySQL. That is MySQL. Get that dab on the recording. Okay. If we click this little SQL box over here, we can see that we can select asterisk from tester. Where? One? I don't know. That's all MySQL too. We'll get into that a little bit later. For right now, we don't have anything to browse. There's no data in here. We just have the kind of data that we can enter. So let's insert one data. Okay, this looks similar to what we were doing before, but now instead of defining our columns, we're inserting rows. Okay, so this is inserting rows. So now, I want you to go back to your ID page in your notes. Okay, in your notes, I want you to go back to that page that was just about ID. And on that page, I want you to write in big letters, never touch the ID. Write it in your notes. Put it in your notes. Never touch the ID. She's not even writing notes. She's just scribbling on her hand. Never touch the ID. Never touch the ID. Do you touch the ID? No. How many times do you touch the ID? No. What do you write in the ID? Nothing. Do not touch the ID. Don't edit the ID. Don't change the ID. Don't type in the ID. Don't touch the ID. The ID is an auto-incrementing primary key, and it must be unique. You cannot fuck with it. Okay? Don't try to fix your IDs. Don't try to change your IDs. Don't try to enter IDs until you know what you're doing, which none of you will anytime in the next year and a half. Okay? So, we don't touch the ID, but we can write a name. Banana. Banana at banana.banana. Banana starts to lose all meaning once you spell it out enough times. Banana, banana, banana. The price of a banana, does anybody know? $10. None of you have clearly watched enough television to understand that joke. Category? Fruit? Probably fruit, right? Date create. Your first instinct is going to be to click this little button. Don't do that. Come over here to the left where it says a function and choose now. Do the same thing for date modify. In the future, if you were to modify this information or update this information, you would not edit the date create, but you would edit the date modify. Because you had modified it, but you would never edit the creation date. when we enter our image, what we could do is we could say like images slash banana main.jpg. Right? Or you guys, if all of your images are in the exact same spot, it might be easier to just do the file name. If your images are in different folders, then store them in different folders. But whenever you can avoid putting more data in your database, it's worth it. So, you know, if all of your images are in the exact same spot, just store the unique information. Okay? But then, if we want to store other images, we might say banana1.png, comma, banana2.jpg, comma, banana3.gif. And then for the example, we might say, how much could a banana cost, really? And then there's a go button. There's actually more stuff. They give you like this weird interface where you can like type another one. I don't know why they did it this way. I don't know why they didn't just do one and then give you the option to add more, but they have another one already prepped for you. I think it's weird. Anyways, you can just click go once you got all your data. Boop. Yay! Now if we go back to our browse, we got a banana. And notice it has an ID. So go back to browse. And there should be a banana. In fact, let's add another one. Let's insert another one. I'm going to insert an apple. I'm going to say apple at banana.banana. The price of an apple is 2.5. If you're browsing right now, what's the price of your banana? Is it 10? Or is it 10.00?
10.00.
That's right. So what price will this be? Hopefully it's 2.50. Category. Fruit. Now. Apple main.jpg. And I'm going to say that this is 1 and 2. And we say much apple. Gazoo. You don't need to copy my data. I'm making bullshit data. And then browse. And now I've got more data in my database. Yay! Let's make another one. Whoops. No, not export. Hello. No, I broke it. Ah, okay. Let's make one more. I'm going to make potato. Potato at banana. How much does a potato cost? 0.25. Category? Tuber? Vegetable. Vegetable. Image main. Potato main.jpg. This one just gets one other image. Potato. We go back to browse. And I've got two categories. Notice that I can have the same category, or I can have different categories. Notice that I got a 0.25, even though I typed 0.25. There's a lot of things going on here. A lot of stuff happening once we start adding in new data. I've got an incrementing time, although my times for each one are kind of the same for both date create and date modify. I've got images, I've got IDs are incrementing every single time. Everything seems to be working pretty good. Yes?
Why when I add the new one and then they said like one row inserted and then data truncate for column price at row 1?
You have truncated the column price at 1. It's probably because your price got set to 10 comma 0 instead of 10 comma 2.
Oh, 10 comma 2. So if I press change, it will change?
It won't update any of the data, but it will update the definition for new data. Okay, so let's go back to that SQL box. Because this thing's fun. Let's come in here. Let's select asterisk from tester. I'm going to click retain query box and then click go. It should, down below, show me everything from tester. Now, I'm going to say select name from tester. You're going to see that now I get 3 rows, but I only get 1 column. The asterisk in the select asterisk from tester is saying select all columns of data from that table. And all rows. And now I've said select name from tester, and so all it's selecting is the name column from each row. It's selecting each row, but only the name column, which is interesting. So let's go back to asterisk, and let's say where ID equals 2. And now it should find me all of the columns, but probably only 1 row, if it would go, wherein the ID equals 2. It even highlighted it here to show me which one I got. Let's select from tester where category equals pants. When we do that, we get no result, because no category equals pants. But when we do fruit, then it should select everything with a category of fruit. You guys, this is how MySQL works. MySQL is a structured query language. A structured query language is to help you query for data. Generally speaking, there's a difference between a query and a question. In that question doesn't need an answer. Like, why are there interstate highways in Hawaii? But what is the time is something that you probably want an answer to. Okay? So a query is something that you expect an answer to. Now, if you don't do a where, then the go, delete the where. Okay, so a structured query language is for asking for data. Okay, there are actually a number of different SQL languages. We're using MySQL because it's free and open source, and it comes with PHP and Apache. And now we have made a database. We have inserted data into the database. We have queried the database to see that data in multiple different forms. And what we're now going to do is export our database. So we're going to click the Export tab. And we're going to do a quick export of our database. When we do that, we're going to export a SQL file that has the name of our table. We're going to export a SQL file that has the name of our table, and when we open it up, it is text. It's a text file that has the definition of how to remake your whole table and how to insert the data of your table again. Basically, this file right here is able to be run in that SQL box, and it would completely remake your database in some other server. If you ever needed to move servers, you would need to export your database and then go into the new database and run that SQL file to reintroduce all of the SQL data into the new SQL database. there's a number of things that this thing does. You'll notice that there are comments in the SQL file. And then there's the ability to add a primary key of ID, and also to make sure that the ID is auto-incrementing. And you can even see that this one sets the auto-increment to 4, so one of the things you can do is change the number that the auto-increment is at, but that's a really bad idea on a proper database. And you can then make a database. This would make a new table on a new database that was exactly the same structure as the current one we have. So, tonight, this week, you have an assignment. And your assignment is to make your database. Okay? Your database is going to be called products and nothing else. Sorry, not your database, table. Sorry, let me say it again. You've already made a database. You don't need to make another database. Okay? I need you to make a new table, not a new database. Okay? So in the database that we've already created, you're going to make a new table next to your tester. Keep the tester around. It's fun to have it and fuck with it rather than fucking with products. Okay? Mess around with the products table. Mess around with the tester table and then make a new products table. The products table is going to need to be defined as your data. What is your data? I don't know. Does your data have a name?
Mm-hmm.
Does it have a price? Does it have a description? Does it have an email? Okay. Does it have specifications? I didn't talk about that. You'll have to figure that out. Does it have images? Does it have like one main image and then like some other images? Okay. Okay. Does it have a height? Does it have a width? Does it have a material? Does it have a color? Does it have possible colors? Because I think that's the more important thing. You're going to have to separate the idea of what is a cart and what is a database, of what is a store. The store doesn't have how many items there are. Like they have how many items are in their stock, but they don't have how many items a person wants, right? A store knows what colors are available. They don't know what colors you've chosen. There's a difference there. So, right, in the database here for products, you would store what colors are available. So this product is available in blue, red, and green, right? Maybe a comma-separated list. What else? You're gonna need a date. That seems important. At least one. At least date create. What else are you gonna need? Do you have a short title for the list page and a long title for the main page, for the product item page? Do you have a short description for the list page and a long description for the item page? Is your product on sale? How do you do that? Do you store a sale price or do you store a sale percentage? Like price is this, sale is 1, which means it's not on sale. Or sale is 1.5, which means it's not on sale, it's more expensive. Or sale is 0.75, which would be a 75% off, right? Is this a chosen item, or like a what's it called when they're pushing it at you? Okay. Is this like a new well, new is by date. What's it called when a store tries to push something at you? Clearance. Yeah. Okay. Is it on clearance? Is it on sale? Is it what? Recommended. There you go. Ooh. Does this file recommend other? Does this product recommend other products? Is this site recommended versus recommended for other products? There's so many things you can think of, and you should experiment with as much as you possibly can. Which, by the way, you guys, you should experiment with as much as you can, because there is an aspect to your sites and my judging of your sites where the more simplistic it is, the less I think you worked on it. I don't want to say you have to go crazy, but if you just give me a page that has one image, a price, and a description, I'm going to think less of the site you turn in, right? I don't want to say that you have to do everything, but I want to say that there are a lot of interesting things that now is the time to explore. Not just because databases are fun, because they are, but because they are going to allow you to design things that are fun. If you add it in the data, you can then design it as a thing. If you have 3 site recommended products, you can show those products on the main page as like dynamically recommended products. Anyways, that's your assignment this week, is to make your database. You are going to make your database. You're going to define the table. So you're going to make a new table and define its structure. You're then going to insert all of the data of your products into the database. So you need to define the structure of the table, and then you need to insert all of your products. And then at that point, I need you to export the SQL file, and you're going to turn that into the, you're going to turn that in with a link to your current progress work next week into the discussion, right? Next week in the discussion, or this week in the discussion, you're going to turn in a link to your progress work, and then you're also going to turn in a .SQL file of your database export. It will be called products.sql because you're not going to name your table anything else. That's it, we're done.